G'day, I'm Mal Leyland from the Leyland Brothers. The first trip that we ever filmed showed us boating down the entire length of the mighty Darling River in 1963. Tonight's story is about a young woman whose family property is on the Darling River near Menindee, not far from where a recent fish kill took place. Now, Kate McBride is barely 21, and yet she's emerging as a leader in the campaign to restore the health of the river.
I can remember growing up, we used to get the dinghy down here and we used to sit in the inner tubes of tyres and just float down for hours and hours, and they are some of the best memories that I have growing up. So we're in the base of the Darling River right now. There is absolutely no water. It is completely bone dry, and it is absolutely devastating to see this occur. This really does cement in my head that something needs to change. I know this isn't right. We need to fix this, and I'm going to do that in any way that I possibly can.
This fish is 100 years old. It's never coming back. This is bloody disgraceful.
We saw nature giving up 1 million fish. So Kate just spontaneously videoed us and made it into something that will sadly resonate for generations to come.
It's nothing short of an environmental catastrophe.
I don't even think heartbreaking begins to describe what we're seeing behind us. Thank you guys all so much for coming. It's just incredible to see you all out here.
Kate's stepped into an area that is one of the toughest places to be.
Huge amount of research into the Murray-Darling Basin.
I'm sure Kate taking the role she has with the river will create friends and enemies along the way.
Kate is a raging force of power, and I'm just really excited to see where that goes and the impact that that will have in Australia.
Currently along the Lower Darling, there are parts that do have small amounts of water. However, we think we've only got about 3 months left. Since all these water issues have arisen, I've really found myself going out and trying to get to the bottom of these issues. We haven't been given that by our governments. And so it's meant that we as individuals have had to go out and really search for that information. We've actually decided to go out and get the water tested independently. We still don't know exactly what's in it. A lot of the families of Menindee are hugely concerned at the fact that up until recently we were bathing in the water that millions of fish couldn't survive in. And it makes me want to get involved because I want to be that person that can help straighten it out. I was born and brought up at Tolano Station, which is in Western New South Wales along the Lower Darling River between Broken Hill and Mildura. So we run primarily sheep, merinos, but we also harvest wild goats. For a sheep property, we are very big.
About 120 kilometres from front to back of the property. Tolano Station would be one of the most historic stations in Australia, without a doubt. We have origins in the 1860s where Burke and Wills came through. The property was a town in itself. You had 3 pubs, you had 3 or 4 shops, and everything was coming up and down on our riverboats.
So growing up, we spent all of our time on the river. As soon as it hit 11 o'clock in summer and it'd get towards 50 degrees, we were straight out on the river.
She was always quite the tomboy. Didn't even want to know what a dress was, and if I tried to put a hair tie in her hair, and she would just rip it out straight away.
My parents divorced when I was about 7 or 8, and I started at school down in Adelaide. When I was 12 years old, I was walking down the street and this car pulled up. I actually tried to avoid this person who got out of the car and was running towards me. And he said, I know this is going to sound really weird and I'm not some weirdo. Here's my card. Here's the number of a modelling agency.
I heard about Kate via a makeup artist who frantically called me one night saying, I've just scouted this beautiful girl.
Long time no see. And I actually went into the agency and I met Bridget. Been a couple of years. And I got offered to do a modelling course. Even this place has changed. I'd never even thought about being a model. First shoot, that was at the training.
When Kate started modelling, it was clear to me she had the X factor. There was a sparkle in her eye, a mischief almost, a kid from the bush, and very natural Australian beauty.
I'm quite excited, a little bit nervous, and yeah, just looking forward to it. So I absolutely loved doing modelling, but after a while I started getting some doubts about it because of the way that other people were looking at me and just calling me, you know, the model, and that's not just what I wanted to be. I wanted people to think of me of not just looking pretty behind a camera, but, you know, really having a voice and doing things with that voice.
Kate's heart was always back on the land at Talano.
The Murray-Darling Basin is Australia's largest inland river system, and it covers a large amount of Australia's most significant agricultural land. The Menindee Lakes is a natural ephemeral lake system that fills from time to time when the river is in flood, and from the 1960s it's been engineered into a man-made storage system that can hold water and release it downstream as needed.
People out here call the Darling River the lifeblood of the outback, and it really is, because everything relies on that water. And when it floods, and particularly the Menindee Lakes, when it floods, is the most incredible oasis. All our households run off it. All of the water that we feed our stock, and that's not just our stock, that's also all the native animals as well.
There's a porcupine there. There's a fox there. My people are there for 40, 60,000 years. Now you can't even get a bark canoe up there. You know, it's just finished. What I know about the river, I try and hand on to Kate so that if I'm not around, she can speak like the white fellas talk, but also speak mine and explain both cultures together. And another thing why we like the lakes, so if they got water up there, the seagulls will know. They'll come through and this will be a stopover when there's water. We can sit down at Vulcania and tell you when the water's coming down by the birds. That's why we must protect everything.
This part of Australia, I think some people see just a bit of a desert, but to me it's my heart and soul, it's everything, it's who I am. So I got the shock of my life in 2015 when, for the first time in my life, the Darling ran dry. I was riding the motorbike down it and you didn't even have to worry about getting bogged. It was completely bone dry. I had no words, and I still can't put it into words what I saw, because it shouldn't run dry like that. If this were a natural occurrence, you could understand, but this is man-made.
In 2014-15, the Menindee Lakes were drained by the Murray-Darling Basin Authority and the New South Wales Government.
That was to meet the requirements for South Australian water downstream. The end result was a vast volume of water was released, and by 2015, the Darling River was dry.
That changed the game forever. That left us with a dry river for 8.5 months. I guess that was a pivotal moment in her life.
I honestly think it switched something inside of me, and it made me want to fight and work for change, but I didn't have the skills for it yet. And And so I actually, by chance, got involved with Australian Conservation Foundation, and they offered the River Fellowship, which was a course that trained people how to become ambassadors for the river.
There's over 100 kilometres of creeks.
The course brought together about 25 people from around the basin, and that included farmers, fishermen, irrigators, and we sort of tried to work out a way that we could best help fix the river.
As we do so, there'll be times that we delve into the science and we delve into the politics.
When Kate first joined the course, she was shy. She was, I think, wondering what her place would be in this program.
Ignore the camera, so don't look at the camera.
Oh, okay, so I can look there.
Second is
Our first retreat revolved a lot around media, and that was something that I was not very good at all. Before the course, I couldn't even speak to a camera. I'd jumble my words. I was the most nervous wreck you've ever seen.
Do we need to do that again? Yeah, we'll start from the top. Yeah.
So I just look at you the whole time, okay?
Over the course of the program, I really saw Kate come out of her shell.
My name's Kate McBride and I'm from Tolarno Station.
And I just thought I better hold on to my seat because I don't know where this girl is going, but she's going to go places and she has a real power in her.
I really want to be that person that can go out there and fight for the people that don't have a voice. I went into the retreat with a love for the river, and after the retreat, I had the ability to fight for it. After the river ran dry in 2015-16, we actually got water back in Menindee Lakes, and that should be enough water for about 6 or 7 years. What happened, though, is that through government decisions, that water was drained really quickly.
Vast volumes of water were released from the lakes into South Australia to fulfil their requirements. Locals were worried that history would repeat itself and the river would run dry. However, they went ahead with it anyway.
We have got a situation where we've got a state and federal government who is trying to destroy the greatest wetland in Australia, south of Kakadu.
It's questionable why such a large amount of water was released into South Australia, given that the Murray River itself was in flood after a wet season and there was surplus water already going across the South Australian border.
The river currently is this putrid green colour. We're on red alert here at Tolarno Station for blue-green algae, which means that we can't bathe in it, let alone drink it or anything like that.
Today I'm in Wilcannia, just passing through, and I just thought I'd show you this, the mighty Darling River, or what used to be the mighty Darling River.
We've been trying unsuccessfully for years to try and get the message out to Australians. This is your heartland, this is your food supply, this is your future. Please help us.
And it wasn't until January that we finally got through to people. It was through social media that we actually started to see some photos of huge amounts of fish dead in the Darling. So my father and I jumped in the car and met up with our mate Dick Arnold. And all of a sudden, the river was just blanketed. It was due to huge amounts of blue-green algae. And what happens with blue-green algae is that when it dies, it actually sucks all the oxygen out of the water. I don't think there's a way to put it into words, seeing millions of dead fish on the river that you've called your home. That was honestly one of the hardest days of my life. And then you were seeing what fish remained, gasping for air. These animals are suffering.
Oh, my name is Dick Arnold. I'm here with Rob McBride with this really sad bloody shot here.
Very spontaneous idea to video ourselves.
And look at these iconic fish of Australia being treated like this.
Nothing was rehearsed, it was just, this is, a few expletives in there. This is hell on earth. This should not happen.
This is a bloody disgrace. This is a man-made disaster. Look at these animals.
Makes me feel like crying again.
I videoed them and we put it straight up on our Facebook page, and in 4 hours we got over 1 million views.
The world changed overnight. We were on our phones 24/7. People were ringing us up from all around the world. It was politicians, it was radios, TV, Then the film crew started arriving.
Okay, next camera.
That was our time. We had to stand up, and while we had that voice and we had Australia's eyes watching Menindee, we really had to use it.
So this has got a huge amount of attention now. How do you feel about that?
It's wonderful that the Australian public have finally, it's broken to the Australian public the reality of the situation.
To start with, a lot of the media spoke to my father because, of course, he was in the video.
It's only going to get worse.
And then I started doing the odd bit of media here and there.
Well, Kate McBride is a fifth-generation farmer.
And they started to pick up me, I think, as a young female.
Now, Kate, $5 million, do you reckon that's going to be enough to solve this problem?
Unfortunately, that's just too little too late.
So I, in effect, almost became the face of the cause, and I didn't even mean to.
How much harder is it for someone like you who's decided to stay on the land?
Oh, it's really, really tough. I mean, you know, where's my future? Can I?
To me, it felt wonderful to see my role superseded by the next generation.
Around 150 protesters gathered amid rotting fish on the riverbank.
I think he's going to point the finger a lot, and I think he's going to use the word drought, but everyone here knows that it's not.
But the minister didn't stop to talk to these protesters, passing by and heading further upstream.
I haven't seen any controversy of that scale in the water space. It consumed the airwaves for weeks. There are even death threats made to Regional Water Minister Noel Blair in New South Wales.
I can announce that we have purchased a number of aerators that we are deploying across the state. These aren't the silver bullet, but these are something that we can install in some of our waterways to try and keep the level of oxygen levels up for those fish.
Outside contractors were actually brought in to clean up the massive fish kills, and what happened is they fished as many as they could out of the river and then put them in the back of trucks and dumped them in mass graves. Just horrific to see, and I just pray that I never have to see it again in my life and that no one does. Now, the council are delivering water out to us. We pay $2 a kilolitre to have treated, filtered river water delivered to our property to bathe in and to drink. Now, they say this is potable water, but it is undrinkable. It's got a yellowish colour, and the fact that you can't even boil blue-green algae out of water makes me really question how they're filtering it out.
I can guarantee that the water being delivered to the water carting program from Menindee is certainly compliant with the health requirements of the Australian Drinking Water Guidelines. They would be able to drink 2 litres per day for 70 years and have no health effects. And that's what the guidelines are based on.
So I'm just dropping in to see Lauren. She's the wife of Talano's manager. Hey guys. Hey. Here's the clean stuff. They're having to actually bathe their child in bottled water that's been donated from incredible people all around New South Wales. All our rainwater tanks are currently dry because of the drought. Can't bathe in river water or anything, can you?
It's disgusting. You can't use the river water for anything. It's killing my plants.
Really?
What would it do to my baby?
The family don't actually trust the filtered river water from the council.
I can't even brush my teeth in it. It makes me want to vomit. We wash our clothes in it, but Will's clothes, Will's dishes, everything to do with Will, his bottles, everything, all in rainwater only, or the donated water.
So just here today meeting up with a local and having a bit of a discussion about the impact the water's having on their skin and some potential skin irritations that her family's experiencing because of the state of the water.
G'day, Kat.
Hi.
I'm Kate from Talano.
Yeah, I recognise you. Come in and meet my son.
Thank you.
Kat has a son called Thomas, and he's currently got some really bad skin irritations on his hands.
Hi, Thomas. This is Kate.
Hey, mate.
They believe the skin irritations are caused by the water that they're currently using at Sunset Strip. This water is directly from the river, and the Menindee Council is saying that it is safe to use. However, they have serious concerns about whether it is or not. So, can I have a look at your hands?
Well, I've got bad eczema and dermatitis. Makes it hard to do just about anything.
And so how do you know it's from the river water?
Well, every time I have a shower, it flares up, or every time I wash my hands or get my hands wet from the water from the taps, it flares up a lot.
Thomas was a barman before, hand problem. Of course, he can't work now. Nobody wants to have a beer handed to them with those hands. A couple of years ago, we had the same issues when the lakes were dry before. I was having rashes and, itchy head all the time.
The water at Sunset Strip is a domestic non-potable supply. There's only ever been one formal complaint about a skin complaint associated with Sunset Strip supply, and that was related to a medical problem.
In the last few years, a new health issue has started to emerge across the Murray-Darling Basin, looking at possible links between blue-green algae and motor neuron disease. It was an issue in the New South Wales election, particularly in the electorate of Murray around Griffith and the Murrumbidgee River.
In Griffith, the rate of MND is around 7 times the national average.
And now locals are asking similar questions at Menindee.
We're very concerned that Menindee is going to become the next Griffith, and that's why we want information. We want to know if we are. I'm contacting Dominic Rowe, who's a neurologist in Sydney.
G'day, Dominic. I've been told that you're the person to speak to in regards to motor neuron disease.
Yeah, well, g'day, Kate. Well, yes, we are concerned that there is a link between something in the environment and motor neuron disease. One of those things may well be blue-green algae. 50 years ago, you could scuba dive in the Darling River. Try that today. I think what's happening in Menindee is representative of what's happening in our inland waterways all around Australia. They're in trouble, and we need to do something to fix that. And so we ignore it at our peril.
Would you be interested in potentially looking into, the Menindee situation?
We already do go out and do field trips. I've been to Mungo and I've been to Pooncarie, but I haven't been to Menindee yet, so I'll come and visit you.
Thank you. Well, you've always got a place to stay with us.
I've got some words here for an introduction for myself and Bill.
I've been doing some work with a lady called Marianne Slattery. She was one of the whistleblowers in the Murray-Darling Basin Authority and is now the head water researcher for the Australian Institute.
Now, I've just got some words here.
She's been an incredible fighter for the Darling River.
Professional associate with Canberra University. Well, the immediate cause of the fish kill was not enough water, blue-green algae in the water, and then temperature changes that ended up sucking oxygen out of the water. For us to talk about irrigation in the north, we have to talk about cotton. Fundamentally, there's not enough water in the river, and that's because of, firstly, a drought. We are in the middle of a very bad drought, but these fish have survived many droughts before. And I think a really big issue here is, one, it's clearly a failure of government. There's been an increase of extractions in the northern basin. Problematic ever since CAP was introduced. Cotton is the predominant crop in the northern basin. It represents 80% of irrigation.
How come these cotton growers making millions of dollars can't afford to buy a bloody meter and put on their own pump?
It often gets pointed out to us that the water that people are using for cotton and other irrigated crops is legal, and we completely agree with them.
They use too much water. Your graphs show exactly what it is. Nothing's coming down the river, and hence we've got no grapevines, we've got no vineyards, we've got no permanent plantings.
But the question that we have for them is it morally right when you see communities like Menindee suffering and millions of fish dying? Is it right to take that water and not allow it to flow down, whether that be legal or not?
Look, I'd really invite Kate and the family to come up and have a look with cotton producers and understand the industry, because a vast majority of the cotton planted in northern New South Wales this year was dryland cotton, rain-grown cotton. Whilst It's a tragedy what's happened out in the Darling. Our industry hasn't been a part of causing that problem.
The bad guy is not cotton. The bad guy is a failure of governance. There was the South Australian Royal Commission that was really limited in scope. The Royal Commission wanted to investigate the Menindee Lakes fish kills and they were denied that opportunity. In my view, the Basin Plan implementation has been an absolute train wreck. It's just been littered with examples of maladministration and malfeasance.
$13 billion has been spent on the Murray-Darling Basin Plan, and right now it's failing. We think that the most important thing that we need to do is get to the bottom of exactly what's going on. So that's why we have been, for a number of years, pushing for a federal royal commission.
Kate's speaking out about one of the most controversial issues in the region, and she is something of a polarising figure. There are people who are very supportive of her stance and welcome the issues that she's raising, while others are cynical about the issues that Kate's raising and the way that she presents them.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Board Meeting 40 in Tibooburra on the 26th of March 2019. The time's 8:05. Where do we begin?
A few years ago, I was actually elected onto the Western Local Land Services Board. We've now decided that we're actually going to contract out someone to sort of do those high-risk pathways. We do everything from sustainable land management to pest management to weed management. We do a lot of travelling around, going out and seeing where our projects are at. Today we're out here travelling along the wild dog fence.
She's the youngest board member in New South Wales of the 11 boards across the state.
They've turned up the right way first.
She was pretty green when she first started on the board, but as time went by and she understood the mechanisms and the governance and how a board works, she just took to it like a duck to water.
So where's the extension happening?
Oh, well, the intention was to come out here towards Adelaide.
Down here, of course, with all our water issues, we really see it that politicians have failed us. And I think that's really part of the reason that people have pushed for me to one day go into politics.
As far as political parties are concerned, they've all shown an interest. Kate's been in discussion in a light-hearted manner with most of them.
A career in politics is definitely something that I've considered, and what really drives me to want to do it is the people out here. I want to be one day that leader that they can look up to and feel like I'm truly representing them. I want to make sure that I finish my studies and I'm completely ready myself to really step up and be that person. So this is my final full year at Adelaide Uni. After that, I will have completed my Bachelor's degree of Commerce.
Obviously, in a closed economy, your consumption possibilities are your production possibilities.
When the next election rolls around or the one after that, I'll work it out closer to then. But I definitely think in the near future that politics is something that I'll get involved with.
I think she is a bit young and I wouldn't like her to go in too early. I think she's got a lot more to do before you head down that very treacherous road of politics.
Probably is a bit strange that someone that has all these big plans and everything has just only turned 21. But as a whole, I think people really do like seeing young people passionate about something, and that's exactly who I am.